There are many times, there are many times I hear the voice, a voice of freedom calling me. Yeah. Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of your favorite show in the whole wide world. The ratings are in and we're so glad you're back. Welcome to the Politics of Kendra podcast. I am Kendra, Muecke from Kendra and the Bunnies. I write books, I do albums, sometimes I snowboard, other times I go to concerts. Today we have Chaz Volk on, also known as Mr. Thrive. Welcome to the show, Mr. Thrive.
Thank you. And I'm so happy that you have brought this podcast in fruition because literally right next to me, hold on one second. I just want to grab something, a little prop here. I literally have your book. And I remember after you gave it to me, I right away started reading the poetry in it and checked out your manifesto, checked out all the kind of stuff in there. It's beautiful. It's just like there's so much amazing literature by you, and it's nice to be in the presence. It's very refreshing to be in the presence of someone who has a mind like yourself.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's a little bit out of my mind, but at the same time, like going so much into it, that it's like external, internal. I don't know, like the push and pull of the tide. And like, I was talking to a friend yesterday about depression, and I was like, at this point, I think it's just like ever-ending existential dread or existential knowing that I'm like so in control of everything in my life, but ultimately I'm not in control of anything in my life because of the great spirit. So tell us, Mr. Thrive. Okay, so you're in the entertainment industry. Let's start with the nickname Mr. Thrive. Where does that come from?
It's a great question. It came from high school, like way before. And the long story short is that when I was in middle school, so even further back now, I personally had faced a lot of turmoil and anger to the point where I was unproductive. And that anger, by the way, it came from being a victim of anti-Semitism on a frequent basis. I was the victim of a hate crime. I got into a lot of different fights, and it was never never a good day in middle school. Middle school was probably one of the worst phases of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, I think it's the worst phase for everybody's life, honestly. Um, Going into high school, I decided I'm gonna like kind of like remodel who I am. Like, what does it mean to be Charles Volk?
Mm-hmm.
And I started doing theater. And Alan Hunt is this amazing, generous, kind individual, and he casted me on a supporting role in The Merry Wives of Windsor, which is a Shakespeare play.
Mm-hmm.
And Bardolph's first line is, "It is a life that I have desired. I will thrive." That's what he says. And
Mm-hmm.
so thrive became this word. And while that line isn't significant, I made it significant. I just kind of made it a part of my life. People began to know me as the Thrive Kid because I used that word like way too much. And, like the teacher would call like roll call, instead of saying here, I would say I will thrive. And like honestly, like it gives me like goosebumps to this day, like
Yeah.
thinking about that, because it was kind of embarrassing. But I'm glad I did it. It got me out of
Mm-hmm.
my shell, and it
Yeah.
changed who I am. So Thrive became this thing, and there was like I was playing with like the name of like I've played like different variations of like my artist name or whatever. I guess the brand. It's like there was a point where I was calling myself Chaz Thrive Volk and just completely taking out my middle name. Eventually, though, I started playing with the idea of Mr. Thrive, and
Mm-hmm.
I think I like that better because it comes off, I think, a little bit like it gives me the liberty to still have the name Charles Volk or Charlie
Mm-hmm.
Volk or even just Chaz Volk. I know I have an identity crisis,
Yeah.
but with Mr. Thrive, it's at least separate from my name, and it doesn't take away my middle name,
Yeah.
and I think it has a lot of implications to it that I think really can help me grow.
What's your middle name?
My real middle name is Bennett.
Bennett.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I like the idea of having like a separate version of yourself. We do this a lot in acting and even like in musical performance, where I just like have this facade that I put on over myself, or like my performance hat, where it's like everything that I'm worried about, I just set all the burdens down, and then I'm able to channel, you know, I have several different names for it, but I'm able to channel like a different version of myself, and it brings so much strength and stuff. I also wanted to mention that it's absolutely terrible that you were bullied in middle school for such an intense part of who you are, and like for being who you are. I also was, middle school was the worst. Like literally, my mom told me that every single day of sixth grade, when she picked me up, I was crying. It was vicious. Kids were vicious, you know? So I love the story that you were able to hook on to things. As a poet, there's specific words that like speak to me, and then I'll have this moment, and it sounds like you had this moment too, where you're like, I have said that one too many times in this conversation. Like, additionally, I really like that word. The principle of the matter, I don't know, all the other words are slipping away, but continually saying something to the point where it's like, oh, I guess I'll make it a nickname.
Totally. And that was, by the way, only my freshman year of high school. After that, I decided, okay, I'm going to make it a point to use the synonym of that word anytime. So I would say like flourish, I would say grow, I would say all these other things, right?
Propagate.
Propagate, yeah.
Expand.
Expand, yeah. No, but then my friends, they really started to pick up on it, and they were like,
Yeah.
oh, Chaz is coming. Use the word thrive. It's like they would like kind of like say it. They began to say it a lot more than I would. So I guess you could say the mission was accomplished. I had an effect.
That's very cool. Okay, so you've always been interested in the arts. Can you give me kind of a pathway of arts through your life, and then to how you're flourishing as an artist and person in the industry now?
Great choice of words. I would say, so art has always been a part of my life. My first original art form that I really just gravitated towards was sketching. I didn't like coloring. I didn't like crayons or colored pencils so much as I did just black and white, practicing of like the hand strokes of sketching. And those were typically dinosaurs that I drew. And sometimes army men and dinosaurs were pretty much what it was. Like that was a very boy thing of me to do.
Yeah.
But later on in middle school, I pursued music, and I played the trumpet. And again, I chose the trumpet because I originally wanted the trombone, because the trombone just looks so cool with the extension of its arm that you got to play with.
Yeah.
But when I got to the music store, they were out of trombones. They were completely sold out. And they had trumpets. The musician was like, well, the trumpet's kind of like a trombone. So, I mean, you know, you can be happy with that.
It's in the horn family.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, fine, we'll do it. So I did it. And I did trumpet for about 4 years. And then in high school, I pursued theater. And around that time, between middle school and high school, is when I knew I wanted to get into film. So I was playing with home films and video and whatnot. I definitely enjoyed theater. I got really engrossed into it. I did 14 plays in my high school career.
Wow, that's a lot.
One thing I also learned about, started to get the sense of, was politics. And what I mean by that is, in order to get any of the lead roles in the musicals, you had to join choir, because the choir teacher was a big part of it. So I joined choir merely for the hope of, you know, advancing and getting lead roles. And I started out as a bass singer and became a baritone singer. And because my range was expanding that much, and it was so much fun to sing. I think my favorite role was when I played Thénardier in Les Mis. That's more of a character singing role.
Oh yeah.
But I loved playing this grimy, schemy man. I originally was going for Javert in that play.
You would play a great Javert. So did you play the character who has like the restaurant, or like the gathering place where everyone goes and they kind of like steal their little trinkets?
Yeah.
I love those characters so much. They're so hilarious, and I love the songs that they're singing while they're pickpocketing people.
Yeah, that was my very last play. That was my very last play at Oak Park High School. Amazing place.
Really good. Really good musical too. I love the songs On My Own and I Dreamed a Dream Gone By. Just like such classics, you know. But
I could see you one day performing a cover on that. I think you'd be phenomenal if you ever got the chance to play that kind of music and perform it.
totally. I mean, I could definitely add it to the repertoire. I mean, the possibilities are endless. Also, when I put things on the guitar, it just naturally gravitates to having my own style, versus just doing like a cover song of it.
Absolutely amazing. I love that you've really mastered that. I really
Thanks.
loved watching you grow. Seriously.
Thanks. So you recently invited me to perform for a networking event that you had as Mr. Thrive Media. So tell us about the networking event that you had last month.
Definitely. I cannot talk about the networking event without telling you about the company. What's going on with the company? Mr. Thrive Media produces podcasts, but also now has opened up a new department of its capabilities. And the new department is the event coordination. So originally, we were actually in the talks of doing this pre-March, pre-quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about, okay, let's find a bar and make a rapport with the owner of this dive bar, and let's get musicians to come in and host these parties. The events are going to be free, and artists are going to come in. It'll probably be best to do it in Sherman Oaks because it's a middle ground between LA, So I'm just thinking, like, what are the different logistics? Comes March, which is also my birthday month, and then the quarantine starts. So there was a setback. I was really wondering, how am I going to be able to do this? And I think the answer really was in front of me the entire time. It just took a little bit of a second to understand the full capacity of what Zoom could be used for.
Mm-hmm.
So we started hosting networking parties, and we just hosted our very first networking party, which was a tremendous success. Over 30 artists showed up. The premise of these networking parties is we want you, if you're an artist or an entertainment professional, any capacity, to bring your friends, to feel free to bring drinks or just to come as you are, just really relaxed. I will always dress nicely, but you could come in your birthday suit. No, you can't. Just kidding. But
Kendra and the Bunnies t-shirt.
You can come in your Kendra and the Bunnies t-shirt.
Shameless.
Perfect plug for that shop.
Yeah, right.
But the networking events, the networking event that we hosted was a tremendous success. Great deal of that success had to do with Kendra Muecke just playing such a phenomenal part in the live entertainment aspect of it, and coming in and just really adding soul and spirit to our event. Over 30 artists showed up, and we already have so many RSVPs for this next event. There's not a maximum capacity, so we want you guys to come in and to RSVP. The event on our next event, we're calling it the next episode, is on July 31st at 8 p.m. As soon as you register, you'll be receiving a Zoom link, and you'll be a part of the Mr. Thrive family. And we're so excited to have you.
It's on July 31st.
July 31st at 8 p.m. And we have other artists as well coming in. We're thinking about also other forms of live entertainment. So I was thinking like can a stand-up comedian come in?
Yes. That would be great.
Or a magician come in. But then we're also thinking about in the future, like we're going to have different themes of these events. So we're also thinking about hosting events around a particular artist showcasing their work. So we can have a screenwriter doing, I guess they call them show and talks, I think is what they're called. Or I guess we could just call it a Q&A. That's the proper term for it.
A show and talk would be where you talk about the story and people ask questions. Or,
yeah.
Or you like show and you're like, this is how I wrote the story. This is the element that led to this dialogue. Kind of like a show and tell. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we would do kind of a more exclusive approach to those events where we get an artist of any type, whether that's a screenwriter, whether it's a painter, a producer, any kind of entertainment professional, the broad definition of that term, we can host that. And so what excites me is that there's endless possibilities. All kinds of artists really can show up to these events. And I think it's going to open up a lot of doors for people who are artists, especially during these times.
Yeah, for sure. Because you'll also like spark that inspiration in them to notice that they can do a lot of different things. I wanted to mention, are you going to do these monthly?
Correct. They're always once a month at the end of the month. We're always hosting them on the last day of the month.
Last day of the month in general.
Mhm.
So whenever this podcast comes out, there'll be a networking event, Mr. Thrive Media. Where can we check out your website?
You can check out the website, www.mrthrive.com. That is mrthrive.com without the period in the middle.
And then you can sign up for the networking event at the end of the month. That's so wonderful. So it was really great. You know, I got to attend myself, and I love the idea of just meeting new artists and being able to socialize and just having that sense of camaraderie and community, no matter what the circumstances are whatsoever. I love the idea of a comedian. I love stand-up comedy so much.
Amazing. Well, I'm gonna definitely consider it with my roommate and employee.
Yeah.
He's my roommate, my employee, and one of my best friends. His name is Izzy Salant, the community outreach. He's actually himself a magician, so we may just showcase him to perform when we do the magic show. But
That's
overall, there again unlimited opportunities in this in the event aspect of all this, and I'm so excited to have you. Really.
Thanks. It was super fun being on the show and getting to network with everyone and share my talent. I had a few people reach out to me who I've kept in contact with, either about collaborating or just like about artist stuff. You know, I've been talking to someone and they're like, yeah, I used to be in choir, but I haven't really been singing since. And I was like, you got to get back out there. You got to sing. It doesn't matter if it sounds like frogs or crickets.
I love it. I love it. It worked.
Yeah,
It worked.
it did, definitely. And it was a really great time too. So let's go back to you're in high school, you did theater. Following that, what was your journey after that? Because I know you got into sound or you are in sound, but I want to hear the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I went to film school at San Francisco State, and that was my first time really out of the bubble of like Southern California suburb life. And
Yeah.
you know, I like my friends in San Francisco would ask me, "Where's Thousand Oaks?" which is where I'm from, and I would say, "It's you know, fake LA." That's what I'd tell them. It's fake LA.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I get it now. It's like the outside suburbs. So
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. I love TO.
Yeah, it's a very scenic, picturesque place, but it's very boring. And you know, as much as I respect the people of Thousand Oaks, I will say that I think city life is definitely more my speed.
Yeah.
And San Francisco exposed me to that.
That's cool.
I really liked everything about San Francisco. I think that San Francisco is a really moving place to be. If you're there long enough, you really get to see the nuances that make San Francisco what it is. And it's so interesting. It's such an interesting, unique place. But San Francisco, I studied film, and I still to this day want to be a film director and a screenwriter. But
Great.
one thing I learned about, not really learned about, more so realized when I was in film school, is I looked to my left and looked to my right, and everyone wants to do the same thing. They also want to direct and screenwrite. So I realized there's nothing about me other than my personality that people are going to notice me for. And while a personality is a great thing,
observation, yeah.
I need to study. Yeah. I need to study a trade. I need to study a technical trade that can get me ahead in some capacity that I can utilize. So I studied sound, and I studied a bunch of other things as well. I also studied a little bit of animation, which I've been exploring during this quarantine again. And I studied some lighting and some camera work, and I have a general knowledge of film, which is really, really cool. But audio is really where I excelled. And I studied with a great professor named Dan Olmsted, and Dan taught us audio. Dan Olmsted is the one who remastered the audio for the Godfather series. That's his claim to fame.
Wow, that is quite a claim to fame.
Yeah, so he definitely has left his footprint in the audio world, and I'm very blessed to have been taught by him. He taught me a lot of things that I know, and the amazing thing about the audio world is that I'm still learning, because there's so many technicalities and so many assets about audio, sound, and as a musician, I'm sure that resonates with you.
Definitely. There's so many different ways to approach a sound. There's so many ways to make a sound. You can use guitar strings. You can use the voice and augment the voice. You can use the piano, the synthesizer. You can just make up a note and then synthesize the sound around it, almost like a pixel on a board. And then you can elongate the reverb and stuff. I've been investigating this too, because I've been working on my new album that I'm like pretty much almost done with. It's every time I listen to it, it's getting to a point where I'm like, yep, this song is like done, you know? So it's cool. It's nice to like investigate and have all these endless things. When I first approached songwriting, I had been writing poetry for a long time and acting and singing, but songwriting, I was like, oh my gosh, I started to get this feeling where it's like, what if I like, what if these are the only songs that I can write? What if they all, you know, thinking that there's just like a finite amount of songs that either will always ever exist, or that there'll be a finite number of songs that come to me and stuff like that. And it's interesting because it's the songwriting process has shown me that there's so many different avenues, like I mentioned with sound, into who I am as a person. So it's like, even if I'm writing about the same thing, and I witness this with poetry, and it can even be tied into acting, even if I'm rehearsing the same scene over and over, the same monologue, there's still those moments where you have that shift in character and you're like, this is a whole new character. This is a whole new song. So then I'll take that idea and put it into a new song. It's like, boom, new song. So yeah, I mean, just being positive and listening for those breezeways of opportunity and where we should move next. I think that also ties into what you were saying about, you know, you graduated college and you're like, so what am I supposed to do now? I just go put on my director hat and just walk on to the Sunset Gower Studios. With acting, I thought that a little bit of an extent too. I was like, okay, so I'll just go to Hollywood Boulevard, or like I'll just start auditioning and stuff. And of course it's a gradual process, but I did go through some of that identity renewal after college and being like, well, what is really like who I am and how can I be fulfilled and continue to be unique? Okay, so then you got into sound, and should we discuss the time that we met then? So
Yeah.
the way that we met was through a catering job at this weird wedding.
That was the craziest wedding I've ever witnessed.
People in all different types of outfits. There was even like a shirtless person.
There was a girl who had an open dress, but by open dress, I mean like you could see her boobs, and she had pasties on. And she wasn't like a dancer or anything. She was just a guest.
She might have been a dancer. Yeah, no, it was a very interesting event, and it was just like super high energy, and there's like so much stuff going on in the psychic field. So we were like bonding, you know, of like, this is crazy. I mean, it's so odd at like catering gigs and stuff where it's just like, this is crazy. This is like, there's like something weird going down. And I'm just like, hello, would you like a tuna tartare? We met there, we bonded there, but then we met again on the set of
Entertainment Studios.
At the Entertainment Studios on the set of America's Court with Judge Ross, where
Right.
I played a bride who had a long train on her dress. And this girl who used to be my friend had stepped on the train of my dress because she said it was too long, but I think it's because she was jealous of the person I was marrying. And then we meet again, and then you brought me on your podcast. So,
Right.
Okay, cool. So I love to see the transition about how I saw you on set where you were working sound, you know, you mic'd me and stuff, and we're like, oh my gosh, so good to see you. It was so refreshing. But then you were like, hey, I'm starting this podcast and I would like you to come on. You called me a few weeks later, I'm starting this podcast. I'd like you to come on and be one of you said I was top 5, but then I ended up being episode 6, and I will accept that ranking.
No. Wait, hold on one second.
First,
because episode one was just me rambling about what I want the podcast to be.
You're
it didn't
right.
count. It didn't count. You're still top 5.
Top 5. Okay. Wow. I was like, this is going to be a very awkward interview, but alas, we have cleared everything up. I'm just kidding. So tell me about the podcast, and it's called Mr. Thrive's Stars of Tomorrow.
That's correct. It's Mr. Thrive Stars of Tomorrow. I wanted it to be the podcast it was actually the podcast I created before Mr. Thrive Media officially became a thing. So it was first the podcast, then the company. But I want it to be the company's identity, like kind of like the company's voice over time. Mr. Thrive Stars of Tomorrow, it definitely has shifted its focus just a little bit, but um, it originally had the angle, and I think this actually wasn't the best angle. A little bit of criticism for myself is that I do not think that my podcast wasn't, I'll dare say, the most respectful and its first initial stages, because it its prompt was to find artists who hadn't been discovered yet. And
Oh,
I made them say that on the air, including you. And
I
I want,
just
I
I
want,
just re-listened to it. Yeah.
I want to apologize because I don't think that that's necessarily the most positive connotation. And I care about artists so much more than that.
Yeah.
And I'll be the first to apologize before anyone, points it out and says, you're not respectful to artists. Well, actually, I do deeply care about artists, and that isn't a proper reflection of me. Um, I will
May
say,
may I say something here?
yeah.
When I re-listened to when I was on your show, it seemed like that didn't phase me at all, because I was at a stage in my career where it felt like, I mean, the discovery of being discovered is a gradual process. I mean, it seems overnight whenever we see, oh, Cameron Diaz was walking down the street and someone's like, you're so attractive. Why don't you be in something about Mary or something like that? But there's so much buildup. There's so much like overtime, audition. Someone knew her in the industry before they walked up to her and said, you're Cameron Diaz and you're a star. And it seems overnight. So where I was in my career, and this was like over a year ago, this was maybe like March 2019 that you had me on the show, I felt it was a very appropriate thing for me to say. And yet when I re-listened to the intro today, that maybe we'll play right after this clip, is I was like, oh wow, I have been discovered now. And then I realized what you were saying of like, well, would I have been intimidated to say that before? Because it's almost like intimidating to be like, oh, I am this, but I'm not this, and I am this, and I am a star, and but not yet, and stuff. But I think that it is like, it's like a film script or something. When you're in a certain time period or something, everything is in the 1800s time period. So when you bring people on, it's like they're on their way. They're artists on their way. That's my take on it.
No, totally. The shift is now emerging artists, so it still has a similar goal. I now say emerging artist, and then they say their name in the intro, and I think that's a much more respectful tone of voice for sure. It's definitely a good tonal change.
Mm-hmm.
Um, here's the moral of the story. I care too much about artists to make them feel bad about themselves. I want artists to flourish. I want artists to be their natural self and to be a part of a community that supports them and helps them, what's the word? Thrive. And and if I can provide that, I will. I
Mm-hmm.
will in every capacity, because that's how much I really care, because artists help us psychologically on a deep mental level be natural. We
Yeah.
surround ourselves with art in our room, even if it's simply a movie poster. That is still art. It still evokes emotion within you, and something as simple as that really can change the way you wake up in the morning and the
Mm-hmm.
way you feel that day. And that is really what I care deeply about: is encouraging an environment that allows for people to keep on creating that medium that brings happiness to the world.
That's so cool that you were able to adjust your style and your approach with maintaining the same mission and the same active theme of your podcast. You just expanded your mind a little bit, and then you thought, hey, I want to approach this in a different way.
Yeah.
It's exciting. So how many episodes have you had so far?
We just released our 34th episode. We
Wow.
originally, in the first season, were releasing once a week.
Mm-hmm.
But with the new workload I've been taking on, because I'm not just producing my podcast, I'm producing two other podcasts, which
Mm-hmm.
is Small Bizcast and Lemonade Land, followed
Mm-hmm.
by the occasional animations that I do, followed by the 3 screenplays that I'm writing, 2 in
Mm-hmm.
which I'm writing with writing partners, 1 in which I'm writing by myself, followed by just life in general, just like me, like life,
Yeah.
and like personal time. Like, it's a lot. So I do 2 episodes per month, which is the standard amount of time um, to produce a podcast for sure. So I produce all of that.
I'm so excited to hear that you're so busy. So you've started to expand to oh my gosh, that's the word of the day now. You've expanded to Mr. Thrive Media. I love the graphic logo, by the way.
Thank you.
You've expanded to the networking. You've taken on clients with the Small Biz Cast, and then what's the Lemonade one called?
Lemonade Land.
Lemonade Land. That's so great. I was really excited when I saw that you were starting to take on clients as well.
And more to come too.
Yeah. That's cool. That's wonderful. Any exciting artists that we can look forward to? Or who was your most recent?
On my podcast, I actually have this woman named Vasi Belacon, who was she actually was technically in season 1. However, I released her episode exclusively because it was experimental. So only a select few people have listened to the episode, and now I'm just going to release it publicly. With Vasi Belacon, who's a photographer, and this interview was actually recorded very experimentally in the sense that instead of being in a recording studio in an environment, because of my sound mixing experience, I mic'd myself up and I mic'd her up as if we were actors on a film set. And then I mixed us as we were walking around as she was doing her photography. So you can hear the sounds of nature around us. You can hear the planes flying overhead. Wow. You can hear the shutter of her camera every time she takes a photo. And you hear our conversation. It's like a 40-minute conversation walking in this small little area off of USC campus.
I love that. That reminds me of like the old school radio story times where you'd hear like sound effects and stuff like that while someone's telling a story.
That was the approach. And it was a very good interview. But again, only a select few listened to it because it was an exclusive interview. And I realize now I think that she deserves a spotlight. So we're gonna bring that into fruition. We're gonna release her episode. And I think it's going to be something really interesting. I think it's going to remind people what outside is like during this time.
I know, right?
Yeah. So it's going to be really nice to put that together. It's going to be really nice to see the feedback on that episode for sure.
That's so inventive. That's a really, really great idea. I can't wait to listen to it.
Thank you. And your episode, by the way, was inventive too. We decided when we released your episode with Kendra and the Bunnies, we decided that we were going to play an entire album of yours underlying the entire interview.
Oh yeah.
So that way people would listen in on it. And so you have to listen kind of very carefully between our words, but you do definitely hear your beautiful vocals and your string. You played your own intro as well, by the way.
I did play the intro. It was a really solid take too. We just did one take.
It was pretty good.
Yeah.
Because that's how talented you are. You have stumbled upon Stars of Tomorrow, where every Friday I, Mr. Thrive, interview singer and songwriter
Kendra Muecke from Kendra and the Bunnies, who has not yet been discovered.
This up-and-coming podcast interviews the up-and-coming. Kendra, I'm so stoked to have you on the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest reasons that you're one of the top 5 names that I actually wrote down in my notebook, and I really do mean that, I've shown it to you, is that you are someone who has experienced an eclectic timeline in your life. Would you agree, or am I a little bit off when I say that?
Well, first of all, time is not linear.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I've always had this one question, and I don't know if it has to do with, the eclectic timeline that I just described or whatnot, but who are the Bunnies?
The Bunnies. So it was funny, you asked me to... Thank you so much. That's so awesome. I liked your comment about remembering what the outdoors is like. I've slowly started to... Well, okay, so I've started to go outdoors a little bit more, but when the whole thing started, I was reflecting on this last night, looking at my front door, and I was like, whoa, when this whole thing started in March, I was inside for upwards of 2 months. I mean, I left the house kind of, but there was a period of time where I was getting groceries delivered, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was inside for 2 months. So much strength. I think we have so much strength as a people, the fact that we've gone through this.
I think we do. And I think some people in our country and our world need more faith in themselves, and they need to remember what the value is of working together as a team, as a nation, in fighting this terrible disease that is occurring.
Mm-hmm.
And we're gonna get out of this somehow.
Mm-hmm.
We are gonna. Just a matter of when,
Yeah.
and making and holding our leaders accountable.
Yeah. I think it really shined a light on the fact that like we each have an individual voice and we each have like a unique perspective too. I mean, we have overlapping perspectives and overlapping opinions and differing opinions and parts of the opinions that overlap as well. But it really like added this facet where it was like, I have to say whatever's on my mind and I have to let other people say whatever's on their mind, whether or not whether or not I agree with it, because that's important. That's where like the true freedom in it is. A lot of it lies is like being able to speak up for ourselves. And it's awesome that we have social media and all these different platforms to like express who we are. I started this podcast because I felt like I've got so much to say, or I'd have these great conversations with like musicians across the country or whatever, friends just checking in, and we'd talk for like 2 hours, and I was like, whoa, this is like really meaty conversation. If we could record this would be excellent. And there's probably little nuggets of wisdom in there that could really help someone understand maybe what's going on with them or something similar.
Is that where you got your idea to create this podcast?
Yeah. And then I took the title from the politics of, I mean, there's politics in everything. There's politics in everything, you know.
Is that kind of the moral of the story?
Well, the politics of Kendra started in college, like my first year of college or like senior year of high school. The name started, but I was writing a lot of poetry and I was like, I'm going to start a blog. So I made the politicsofkendra.com, just would post poetry there and stuff. And I don't know, I think I came up with the name because it's like the same idea of the components of Kendra. Because basically I'm talking about the stuff that makes me up. When I write poetry, it certainly comes from most of it comes from a particular experience where I'm writing about the experience. So it's like a thread of the narrative that goes throughout my experience, and it's from particular words, and it's really poetic in that way. So that's how I came up with the politics aspect. Later on, politics became important to me as I started to realize how much they are invasive and affirm our day-to-day life. And I realized that I would notice little bits of conformity and like, you know, like books like 1984 and The Village and The Giver and other dystopian literature has always been kind of my cup of tea when I was younger. And so that translates to now too. And I was just like, you know, there's so much stuff going on that I at least want to have a platform, you know, or a name to start describing it. You know, it's kind of like the politics of Kendra. I can say what it is that I really mean, and it doesn't have to be exactly what I say to someone in my day-to-day life. Although I do go to those places with people in day-to-day life, you know, but to have a platform that's a little bit of an avenue for me to talk like that. Like, oh,
no, sorry, it's not you. I'm sorry. It's been a long day.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, my sleep schedule's a little crazy too. You were out partying last night, weren't you?
Totally, in my quarantine clubhouse.
Yeah, Club Corona. So tell me, do you have like a mission statement or a reason? What is something that's like, you mentioned Mr. Thrive, but is there something that you gravitate to recently or that's become your mission statement? Excuse me.
Totally. Well, the mission statement of the company is to create engaging content while connecting artists across the nation.
Mm-hmm.
We've been doing that since last year, which is such an amazing thing. It's already like the 1-year anniversary of the company.
Congrats.
But in terms of like my personal mission statement, I think that there's more that successful people can do. And I would say step 1 is to be successful. Step 2 is to do the things that no other successful person is doing. Like one example, you talk about the politics and everything. It's not even a political issue, but it's become political, which is why hasn't anyone fixed Flint, Michigan's water situation? Like Bill Gates could have fixed it a
Overnight.
thousand times overnight, a thousand
Yeah,
times the amount of money that
practically.
he has. Why is why does Skid Row exist? Why does New Orleans still in ruins after Hurricane Katrina?
It devastated New Orleans big time. Why
So
is there hunger in third world countries? I mean, I understand when it comes to like American politics, they're all the way over there. But on the same note, it's like, yeah, yeah.
I think if someone independently were to move forward and to use their resources to help these situations, it can be done in days. And I
And
really do mean days. I really think that a lot of these problems are quick solutions, and there's too much noise or too much distraction or just not enough
uh-huh,
care to solve a lot of
uh-huh.
these. So my personal mission statement is life just really comes down to the simple answer of let's make the world a better place. Let's leave the world a better place than we found it. Um,
Can I add one more thing on? Okay, so you said like, a millionaire, billionaire, trillionaire. I think we just had our first trillionaire with Jeff Bezos. Could Congrats. Congrats, dude. So we could like fix the water in Flint, Michigan, but everyone says, okay, yeah, they could fix it, but like there's no profit in that. They're just investing in a city to make it a better place. And it's like, okay, well, then one, we're exposing the clear fact that a lot of these people in authority just don't care about other individuals, or else it would have been done overnight. I know if I had access to that amount of money, I'd be like, boom, new water system, some other structural community things to help out with the adjustment of going through that traumatic experience. But so it's clear that some of these people just don't care. Maybe they're overwhelmed with everything else going on, but they could also like hire staff who could figure out how to care for these things. Additionally, they're like, oh, there's no profit to be made during this. And it's like, yeah, but if that's all you're concerned about, there's definitely a way to make profit, because if you revamp the entire water system, then you're basically getting a stake in the water system. And then there's plenty of contracts that you can draw up where you get like 5% of the water payments from the city for like 10 years or something. There's so many things that can be drawn up to be mutually beneficial. So it has come down to the people who are for goodness and maybe just not awake or just a little bit taken with something else, because it hurts me to say, oh, there's good people and there's bad people. It's like there's good people and then there's also other people.
I would say a really good word is absorbed.
Mm-hmm.
I think just a lot of these people are so in their own world that they forget about the world around them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a shame. And because a lot of these people who have made these businesses don't focus around community. They don't focus around the importance of having that following and caring for it
Mm-hmm.
for
That's
free.
wonderful. That's wonderful.
So,
You do have a Patreon account though.
I do, and that's what I don't use it very often.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that's what Vasi Belakon's episode was originally on, the photography
Oh,
episode.
right.
But again, I do not think that at this time it's an avenue I want to explore. I think there's other avenues that are either more lucrative or more beneficial to my mission
Mm-hmm.
for a better long-term effect.
I agree with what you're saying. When it comes to content, I do like to get my content out there to as many ears as possible. That's the initial part of creating content, is like, let's get people to watch it. Let's get people to listen, and
Yeah.
let's make it easy for them. I mean, I could like knock on their door and be like, hey, do you have a minute to talk about Kendra and the Bunnies? You just pull up your phone. Here's my Instagram, yeah,
They say
that's great.
we should take a note out of Jehovah's Witnesses books and just start doing door-to-door salesman work.
Yeah.
Conversion to fanship, right?
I feel like that would also like create a lot of sales. It's like, look, we have t-shirts, we got albums, we've got stickers, magnets, other stuff.
I love it.
Yeah. It's
Oh,
the ease, the convenience of it. People want the convenience of it.
yeah.
At times.
All said. In fact, we should just hire Jehovah Witnesses to do this. Like they're the experts at door-to-door
Yeah.
citizenship, right?
Yeah.
So
And
they'll come up.
I
Yep, we're
am
going to talk about Mr. Thrive Media.
do you have a minute to talk about Mr. Thrive Media? I do enjoy like some culty aspects of stuff too. So the people are going to be like, Mr. Thrive, Mr. Thrive, wake up just thinking about Mr. Thrive every day. They're very dedicated
So cool.
fans.
Cool.
Okay, so you told me about these screenplays. Obviously, I'm not going to dig too far into what's going on with them, but do you want to talk about your journey on the screenwriting process and what your process is?
Yeah, I'll be happy to talk about that. My origins in writing actually, they begin back to like middle school. I tried writing a book when I was in middle school.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, I realized, well, this is just a copycat of the Halo video game series because I just loved it that much and I couldn't get it out of my head. But since then, that has adapted into a much deeper story that I'm gonna write later on in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really excited to see this sci-fi epic become something. And for the record, just so everyone knows now, it looks nothing like what Halo the video game looks like. There's no aliens involved. There's nothing like that.
Yeah,
it's something much deeper, much more political than anything a middle schooler could have come up with at the time.
Yeah.
So, but that's where my origins in writing really started. I tried writing something, and did it work well? No, but I kept on going. In college, I really began exploring theory, like writing theory and literature and screenplays. I learned how to analyze films and hyper-analyze films in film school, and also a little bit in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, it's to the point where I can no longer watch a movie normally anymore. Like I'm more than just a film snob. I'm just like hyper-analyzing it.
Uh-huh.
That's why I can't stand when someone else is talking during a movie.
Oh my gosh, give me a break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm able to dissect films and look at that and really understand the theory behind the film. But I've been screenwriting since about high school, and I've worked on some really great things. And there's actually one script right now that I'm rehatching because a friend of mine who fell in love with that movie that I made reached out to me and said, I think this can be turned into a full feature film. Let's write this together.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, no, I don't want to do that. It's an old high school film. And then I realized, shit, he's right. He's right. So we're turning this mockumentary that I made in high school into a full feature film.
Excellent. Excellent. Do you have any of the footage of the original production from high school?
Oh God, I do. Do you want me to pull it up? It's the mockumentary is called Zombie Camp, and it's about the POV experience of being a zombie hunter in the post-apocalyptic world. And it was a fun little 10-minute mockumentary I made, but it was such a ridiculous level of production quality. At the time, it felt so good, and like looking back now, I just cringe. But I'm still proud of what we were able to produce. That was actually a really fun film to shoot.
Right. You have to be happy with the material that you make at the time. Very much so. This book I've edited 5 million times. I remember when I first started, I did like 50 pages and I was like, oh, this is probably good. Like, this is it. And then I started to uncover some of my other poetry from like years before in my basket of journals. And I was like, oh, this is going to take much longer than I thought it was going to be. I'd print it out and I'd edit it with a pencil. And then I'd type it up and then print it out and then edit it. And then print it out and then edit it. And print it out and edit it. I'm happy to say there's only one thing I left out in the book. So I included it like tenfold in the second one.
Well, I can tell you right now, the level of quality that you're writing is far beyond the level of quality that Zombie Camp was.
Well, I was just saying we do as much as we can, and then you gotta. Now I'm starting to understand why artists say you just gotta let the. What is the term? Let the kid out of the house, I guess. You just gotta let the kid. It's like about fear, and it's like your child. So I would equate it to like the first time I had a sleepover ever outside the house. You just gotta let the kid go. It's not gonna be the best time. They're gonna be scared of the ghosts in the people's houses. but it's still going to be good. It's a moment of growth.
I love that. Okay.
I
Great.
guess. Yeah. It's a phrase that no one has ever used before, but now we can use it. You got to take the pie out of the oven.
Ooh, okay. Okay. I like phrases that people don't use anymore.
Yeah.
One of my favorite words is mollycoddle.
Mollycoddle.
Mollycoddle? Yeah.
What's
It's like
that?
when you're biting around the bush, like when you're not addressing something. So like I remember like my roommate in college, he said to me, "Don't mollycoddle, just say it." And I'm like, "What is molly? What is that word you just used? Is that a vegetable? What is that?" Like I've never heard that before. And at the time, by the way, I was doing a word of the day calendar every day, posting it on my Snapchat. My friends were annoyed with me.
That's cool.
So 3 days later, after he used that word and I had never heard it, the word mollycoddle showed up.
Whoa.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
It sounds like you hung out with some really intellectual people in college.
Brandon, my roommate in college, Brandon, helped me, I would say, learn how to properly critically think. If that makes sense. Like how to look at things from a more educated standpoint, how to be willing to, say, I don't know a certain thing, how to have a thicker skin, how to have a conversation. Like he really had an impact on me. He was a gear that helped my gears turn.
Yeah.
And he had such an impact on my life for sure. That guy was amazing.
That's cool.
What are you thinking about?
That's cool. I was just thinking about how sometimes I I guess it used to be like a hypercritical nature where I overanalyze everything, but I realize now it may be closer to, I was even thinking of conversations I have where I just coddle the conversation. And I think it can relate to sometimes you just got to get the pie out of the oven. So tell me, where can we stream your podcast? Where can we tune into your networking events? Where can we reach out to you on social media?
Totally. Well, so you can follow me at Mr. Thrive Media on all social media platforms. So at MR Thrive Media, you can type that in on Instagram and Twitter. You can find my accounts that way. On Facebook, they also apparently have an at Mr. Thrive Media for they use the at symbol on that as well for Facebook. But you can just type in Mr. Thrive Media and I'll show up there just fine. Let's see here. My website is mrthrive.com, mrthrive.com. And what else? What else do I got? What else do I got for you? Some other juicy nuggets. My podcast, Mr. Thrive Stars of Tomorrow, can be found on all podcast platforms. That includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, you name it, it's there. And that includes all of my podcasts, all of the podcasts that I produce. The other two that I recently brought up, Small Bizcast and Lemonade Land, are also on all platforms. You just got to type them in. Or you can type in Mr. Thrive and all of my podcasts show up right down there.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait, what was I going to say? I'm so sorry. Oh, yeah. Are you accepting applications or submissions for artists who are interested in being on your show?
Oh my God, absolutely. My podcast always needs fuel, and you guys are the perfect fuel to get this rocket to the moon. And if you are an artist of any kind, I don't care if you are a juggler. I don't care if you only paint or you only yodel. I want you there. I want you to reach out to me and let me know that you have interest in being on the podcast. We'll set up a pre-interview session, get to know each other, get acquainted, develop a rapport, and then we'll actually do the interview. My approach to my interviews is that I want to help you sound your best. And I want you to have the spotlight to be able to promote your work. And yeah, it's pretty exciting and a pretty awesome opportunity, I think, to be on a podcast. And then also we can feature you in the community.
Cool.
In terms of community, we always host our events once a month. It's best, I find the events are on Facebook. If you go to our Facebook page, Mr. Thrive Media, the events are there. When is this episode going to be released?
I think it's going to be in a couple months because I've got a little bit of a backlog.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So let's say maybe September.
Oh,
Early September.
Okay. Gotcha. I didn't realize that's how many interviews you've done.
Well, so there's going to be a 2-week gap, and I probably have done 5 interviews.
Well, good for you. Okay.
So maybe it'll be in August, though, but late August.
Well, then I'll tell you what, guys. Just know that we always host our events on the last day of the month. If you go to Mr. Thrive Media, again. If you guys go to the Facebook page, Mr. Thrive Media, you can find our events, and our events for our virtual networking parties are on there. Just be sure in the description to register with your name, email, and you will be a part of our amazing Mr. Thrive family. And we couldn't be more excited to have you. We look forward to seeing you.
Where can people contact you to be on your show?
You can email me, Chaz at mrthrive.com, mrthrive.com. Or you can slide into my DMs on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah.
Just slide on in there.
Wow.
And just message me saying, Chaz, bro, put me on your show. Pretty please. Yeah, that sounds right.
Just something professional like bruh. Yeah. Bruh. Put me on your show.
Bruh.
So I will link every single link and stuff in the description of this podcast episode, everyone, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify. And thank you so much for being on the show today. It's an absolute delight. I have to say, we've talked for just over an hour, and it was just like amazingly smooth sailing. So I'm very pleased. So thank you so much for being on the show today, and I appreciate your time.
Kendra, thank you for giving me the platform to be able to talk about myself and be an egotistical maniac. And thank you for being always such a great, refreshing, just space in the room. And I really appreciate it. You're awesome.
Bruh. That's like the sweetest thing ever. Thank you again, and thanks to everyone for tuning in. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Peace.
All right.